to welcome you back to Beyond 60 Unscripted. And remember, this is the podcast that proves that life after 60 is not about fading out, it is about leaning in. I'm your host, Ruth Williams-Brinkley. And today we are going to be talking about stepping into a new season of life with creativity and purpose. This episode is about woodworking. That's the topic, but it really is about something larger. It's about identity, it's about reinvention, and finding something that is yours when your calendar finally belongs to you. I am being joined by my good friend Bob Giff. Bob has found a meaningful rhythm in retirement through woodworking. Bob, thank you so much for being here.
Ruth, I really appreciate you having me join you. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
I'd like to start at the beginning of this chapter in your life. So, just by way of reference, Bob and I met. Bob, what did we decide? Over 25 years ago, right?
Yeah, at least.
Yes. So when we worked together as health system consultants doing operational turnarounds for health systems in financial trouble. Bob is an engineer by training. However, I want to give Bob the opportunity to briefly add a little texture to his background before we get into what he's doing with woodworking, because it's a rich life. We're all multidimensional. So, Bob, share with our audience a little bit about yourself so people know a little bit about you, your family, and the work that you're doing and what you did in your big job, what I'm going to call your big job, and then what you did as you transitioned into this phase of your life.
I was born and raised in the city of Pittsburgh, and my father was a laborer, and my mother was a stay-at-home mom, because this was, of course, the early 50s when I was born and grew up.
Yeah.
The opportunity presented itself for me to go to college and go in engineering. So I went to the University of Pittsburgh, got a bachelor's degree in industrial engineering, a master's degree in operations research, and started to work on a doctorate, only because that was the next rung in the ladder.
That's what you do. That's what you did. Yeah.
Ultimately, I went to work as the management engineer in a hospital. And that's essentially an industrial engineer working on process and quality improvement. I spent 42 years in and around hospitals. Spent 30 years of my career traveling as either an internal consultant for a healthcare system or as an independent consultant or a consultant for a consulting company. So I spent 30 years on the road, and you know what life is like on the road.
Yes, yes, I do. We spent a lot of those years on the road doing work together.
We did indeed, in beautiful places.
Absolutely. Beautiful, beautiful places.
And you know, we did good work. I like to think we did high quality work. But one of the things about that work is I think the word I'm looking for is ephemeral.
Yeah.
And the results that the work produces are oftentimes separated in time and space from the work that you actually did.
Yes.
And that contributed to my wanting to find something that was more tangible and more real when I retired.
Yeah. And I want to dig into that. And before I do that, though, I want to talk about our Beyond 60 Buzz, because it actually relates to what you just said, where we bring a timely story that connects to life after 60. So this week, I read a local story about a gentleman by the name of Jason Cates. He's a former Marine and retired police officer who has found a new sense of purpose by telling stories of veterans, first responders, and others who have dedicated their lives to service. After spending a lot of his life helping people through structured roles in the military and law enforcement, Mr. Cates is now using storytelling as another form of service. He shines a light on people whose impact can sometimes go unnoticed. And it really struck me because it reminded me of my journey and to some degree, of your journey, my journey with this podcast, and that reinvention doesn't have to be flashy. Sometimes it is simply choosing a mission that gets you out of bed with intention. And I love telling these stories about what people are doing after 60s. And I've had conversations with you, and I know you love your woodworking. So this is what we do, and I think everybody has to find their own path. So first of all, retirement is not an ending; it is a pivot, really. The uniform comes off, the title changes, the plane tickets go away, but your need for meaning does not disappear. That's what first thing. Second thing is purpose often shows up through something concrete. For Mr. Cates, it was storytelling. For you, Bob, it's building. Different outputs, same underlying need, contribution, creativity, and a reason to keep growing and to stay alive and interesting. And the third thing, the real question is this: if you had to choose one project for the next 30 days, uh, people need to think about what would give you energy, what would they do, what would it be, and how much satisfaction would it give you? So, Bob, when you hear that story of Mr. Cates and bringing these stories alive, what comes to mind for you? And what do you think people might misunderstand about reinventing themselves after 60?
I think part of it is years ago, back in the strategy field, one of the things they talked about was core competency.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's about finding something generically that you're good at and building on that. And it seems to me that with that storytelling, this gentleman had that as part of his ability to do, even if it wasn't a primary role or a primary function. Similarly, in my case, doing something that adds value,
Yeah.
it was always something that was important to me, and doing something that the result of which was the best it could possibly be at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean it was perfect. It doesn't mean it was ideal, but it's trying to contribute and taking pride in the contribution, not boastfully or not egotistically, but being able to look at that and say, that was well done, and I'm glad I was able to do that.
And would you say too, Bob, it gives you something tangible too? Like you mentioned earlier, a lot of our work is intangible, it's ephemeral as you described it. But does that give you a certain a certain sense of satisfaction looking at something that you can touch, you can feel, that people can see? Or am I misinterpreting that?
No, I think that's spot on. That was something that, as I thought about what I wanted to do next,
Mm-hmm.
having something that was tangible and real was
Yeah.
very important to me. Um, we dealt a lot in analyses. We dealt a lot in the written word, but those things change over time.
They do.
Besides, nobody wants to sit and read a 200-page consulting report. Um,
No, no, I thought everybody read our reports, page to page, page after page.
uh,
I deluded myself into thinking that.
yeah, I think that's true. Um, you know, I but it's again having that real item that you can point at and say, yeah, I made that. It's got flaws. It's less than perfect. I learned a lot from it, but it's tangible.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
So, Bob, let's go back to the beginning. I want to go. How did woodworking become a part of your life after retirement?
well,
Tell us, our audience, about, was it something you always imagined doing, or did it come as a surprise, or just share with us how it became a part of your life?
I may have been genetically predisposed to doing this. My my father and his uncle with whom he grew up,
Uh-huh.
uh, both were tinkerers. They both had workshops. Both did small things.
Yeah.
They went through the Depression. They went through World War II. Um, they lived in an era when you never called the guy. They fix stuff themselves.
Uh-huh.
So that's the kind of environment I grew up in. I was either too arrogant or too busy to take advantage of that when I was a teenager or even a younger boy, because I had games I wanted to play, sports I wanted to be involved in,
Yeah.
but it incubated.
Okay.
Um, but
It was sort of in the back of your mind, even though
yeah, it was always there. And
yeah.
then I bought a home, so I had the tapes playing from my father that said, "Never pay somebody to do what you're capable of doing yourself."
Yeah.
So I had some rudimentary DIY tools and learned how to do some of this stuff. But it really hit home when I was contemplating retirement. And Brenda, my wife Brenda, and I would talk about it, and she made it very clear. She said, "I have my routine, I have what I do. You got to find something to do, because I don't want you to become that cliche of the retired guy who follows his wife around the house and then tries to tell her how to do things better."
So get a life is what she
Yeah,
was basically
pretty
telling you.
pretty much, pretty much. So I started thinking about those kinds of things and what might I experiment with?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've been a lifelong reader, but you can only read so many books.
Yeah.
You can only watch so many movies. You got to have something to do.
Yeah.
And as we've talked, you have to have a reason to get out of bed in the morning and get to it.
Yeah.
There were, speaking of books, there were three books that really laid some groundwork for me in this. One was, I think it's called The Seasons of a Man's Life by Daniel Levinson, written
Mm-hmm.
back in the mid to late 70s, where he talks about moving into late adulthood,
Mm-hmm.
which is where I'm heading.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Another one is a book called Mastery by George Leonard. Talks about performing at different levels, and you hit a plateau and you got to be comfortable at that plateau before you move on to the next one.
Yeah.
And then the last one is William Bridges' Managing Transitions,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's
I'm
not the
very
change
familiar
that
with that one.
yeah,
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
it's not the change that does you in, it's being in no man's land.
Exactly.
But as I thought about that, I decided, well, I might like to try my hand at woodworking. I love wooden furniture. We have a house that's filled with mission furniture, stickly furniture, and it's all wood. It's woefully out of fashion with the current motifs and things, but that's what we like.
And that
So
very clean lines. Those are
yes,
are pieces of furniture. I've seen a lot of those and have a few pieces myself. They're very clean lines. They're not fancy or anything, but they fit with anything, quite
yeah,
frankly.
it's not the Queen Anne with the funny
Right.
feet or any of those kinds of things. So I've always admired that. So I thought, I'll get some tools and start working at it. And one of the theses of the mastery book is you find instruction. So I was fortunate enough to get to know a guy whose wife was the director, the director of home health
Okay.
here in town. He was a master cabinet maker. He was a master turner, and I relied on him to teach me some of the basics.
Mm.
And it was very, very helpful. So that's sort of how I started down this path, and it's been incremental over the last more or less 20 years.
Wow.
Um, yeah,
Wow. So Bob, let me go back just for a moment, and I'll come back to this. So retirement can be such a huge shift when you're used to traveling every day and doing all the things that we know that we did as consultants and even before consulting. Um, you go from a very structured career to all this open time. So, and you just mentioned that you have to have something to do. Can you take us back to those first few months of retirement and before you found woodworking, first weeks or months, before, what was it like before you found the woodworking and it became a part of your life and your routine?
Well, there's the anxiety of what am I going to do with all this time?
Yeah.
And how am I going to fill it up? I was extremely fortunate in that this gentleman that I mentioned, Wayne,
Mm-hmm.
was at the time managing a local wood retailer,
Okay.
and it's a store called Woodcraft, and
Okay.
it's a retailer that sells woodworking supplies, woodworking tools, power tools,
Yep.
and
Yep.
wood. And he nagged me for a while to come and go to work there. Come just a day or two a week.
Yeah.
You know how that
Yeah.
goes. So I did some of that, and it gave at least a day or two a week some structure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it was good. It gave me that opportunity, and more importantly, it introduced me to a new community
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and a new language.
Right.
Because woodworking has its own language, as does any craft.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that really helped. Um, so I had a relatively easy transition. I worked there probably for a couple, 3 years, a day or so a week, and,
Okay.
and taught some woodworking classes ultimately and that kind
Okay.
of things. And I know this will be a shock to you, Ruth, but I helped out with some organization.
Oh, Bob, I'm not even going to tell. I have to share with your audience your very organized tendencies, which I'm quite jealous, quite frankly. You have one of the most organized sock drawers I've ever seen. And I've seen pictures of your workshop, and I know it, and I know it is very organized. And I'm sure you wouldn't have been able to work in somebody else's place without organizing it, right?
Well, that is true. I have worked in some community workshops. Um, they're crazy making for me. And I contend that I'm organized because I'm lazy, because I
Okay.
don't
You
want
don't
to
want you to
spend,
look for stuff.
that's right. I don't want to spend all that time running around looking, where did I put down my pencil? Where did I leave the ruler? But that's me.
It makes sense because you can spend a lot of time looking for things if you don't put what did you and I talk about? Everything has a place, everything should be in its place.
Yep. Miss Sturm, my second grade teacher, had a line, a place for everything and everything in its place.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So it sounds like this hobby has become more than just a way to pass time for you, uh, right? Is that
It is. It is. It is. It is very much who I am.
I
Um,
want to pick up on that. So how has that shaped your identity and who you are? Talk about that a little bit.
well, I was thinking about this earlier. When you go to dinner parties or cocktail parties or any kind of social event, I
Yeah.
don't know if this is true of women, but it's true of men. They ask what you do.
Yeah.
They don't
It's
ask
true of women as well.
necessarily who you are, or,
Yeah.
you know, um, they ask what you do. Um, and you, Obviously, when you're working, that's an easy question to
Yeah.
answer.
Yeah.
But I've seen with so many retired men, they don't really have an answer for that, because again, they if they don't play golf or have an activity, they kind of founder.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
I I think of myself as a woodworker and a furniture maker,
Okay.
because I spend a lot of time at it.
And you
Uh,
made some significant pieces of furniture.
yes, I have. I've made, um, I don't know, over 40 pieces of furniture.
And
Um,
are those cabinets, beds? I know you've made chest of drawers or desk. Tell our audience about some of the pieces you've made.
I've made bedroom furniture for I got complete bedroom sets for some of our granddaughters,
Yep.
which would be beds, nightstands, dressers, blanket chest, mirrors.
Mm-hmm.
I built a fireplace surround for our son and daughter-in-law's house. And coincidentally, we had a conversation last night. She wants a console table to go behind her sofa in the living room. So I think that'll probably be the next project.
You've done a charcuterie tray. I saw
Yeah.
that. That's quite a tray. It's beautiful.
Yeah. But it's serving trays, serving dishes,
Yep.
just that kind of stuff. And invariably, sometime around October, Brenda finds the picture and says, this would make a really good Christmas present for the neighborhood. So then I go out and we make those.
It's
Happens that way.
amazing. But what I'm curious, what keeps you coming back to the workshop each
Uh,
day after day?
um, the next perfect piece of furniture.
Ah, okay.
I, I had this naive belief in my career that there was going to be this capstone project, the project that I could always look at and say, that was the best final thing I ever did. And there were really good projects with really great outcomes, but there was never that final one. And I have that naive belief with the woodworking that the next one's going to be it. Probably one of the most complicated things I did was Brenda's desk
Yeah.
because it's got, 7 drawers and pedestals but as with any woodworking project, it's not perfect.
Yeah.
There's a fatal flaw of woodworkers. They'll make something, and when they show it to somebody, the first thing they do is point out all the mistakes they made while making it. It's what we do, but it's a case where, like surgeons, see one, do one, teach one.
Yep. Yep.
You make one. When it's over, you critique it. Okay, I did this. Next time, I'll do that.
Yep.
And,
Yeah.
and I actually do that consciously. At the end of every project, I sit down before I deliver it, and I say, okay, I know I did this, and okay. So I know next time I make something like this, I'll do A instead of B.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. So what does, I know you're aiming for perfection and you will always be aiming for perfection. So what does a really good day in the workshop though look like for you? If you're going to find something that you can improve on the next project, what makes you feel really good?
well, the cavalier answer is to walk out with all 10 of my fingers.
Well, there you go. That would be important.
Um, but when something goes right,
Uh-huh.
for example, if you're joining 2 pieces of wood together,
Yep.
whether it's you're putting legs on aprons for a table,
Mm,
or you're putting dovetail joints together for a box or a drawer, when they fit and they fit flush and true and square, that's a good day. It's a good day.
I say it's a good day for myself when I'm trying to put together a flower stand or a plant stand and I don't have any pieces left over and they all fit like they're supposed to.
Well, in woodworking, Ruth, there are no mistakes. There are only design changes. You
So
know,
talk about that. What does that mean?
that means you screwed up, and now instead of instead of scrapping it, you're going to tweak the design a little bit so you can salvage this project.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But isn't that how the creativity really comes out? Because I would imagine that sometimes you come out with something that was more beautiful or more creative than you ever thought it would be. Is that true?
That is sometimes true.
Okay.
There are two things that resonate with this that I learned from Wayne, the guy who's taught me a lot of this. One is woodworking is all about problem solving.
Yeah. Okay.
And the second thing is the difference between a good woodworker and a great woodworker is a great woodworker knows how to fix his mistakes.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
And that's important. And keeping all your 10 fingers.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You lay everything out, you mark everything. Well, I'll give you an example. I was making a dresser for Courtney and lay it all out.
Your daughter, Courtney. Yeah.
Our daughter. And do the cuts and realize I made this cut wrong. Okay. What can I do to salvage this piece of cherry?
Ooh.
Okay. Well, instead of having it be the second shelf, it can be the top sub shelf. I can still use it and nobody's going to see it. Okay. That's great. It works.
That is a good way to think about it. That you have a vision in mind, but at some point you might make a mistake or miscut or something, and you figure out how to salvage. That's a good way to think about it.
Well, and one of the things I'm sure you've heard me say before, it's the newbie attitude. Blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be bent out of shape.
That's exactly right. We used to talk about that a lot.
Yeah.
So at this stage in your life, Bob, you're retired, you're doing this. What does woodworking give you? Is it relaxation? Is it a challenge? Is it a sense of purpose? Is it all of the above, none of the above, or something else?
It's really about the challenge.
Okay.
I think, and yes, it's relaxing, and I enjoy it. I look forward to it on a daily basis. I dream about it at night.
Really?
Yeah, I do. Because I'll get into a project, and that's where the thoughts incubate, and I'll wake up in the morning and say, I really could try this instead of that. But it's about the challenge, because every project I try to do something new.
Yeah. Okay.
A lot of the smaller stuff is not quite production work, but it's making something I made previously. But with a lot of the furniture, it's okay, you haven't made one of these before. How do you go about doing it? And oftentimes with furniture, it's here's a picture. I want something like this. Okay. Yeah. So there aren't plans to work from. So I sit down and try to draw some plans. And
so you draw up the plans yourself in many cases.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway.
Well, what kinds of projects are you doing right now? What's a drawing aside from the ones that you've been assigned to do or been asked to do or been commissioned to do? What are you drawn to right now? Make anything that you wanted to make.
I want to begin to introduce maybe a little less rectilinear, pure mission stuff. Add more curves.
So you're pushing yourself in creative ways to sort of push yourself forward and do some different things.
Yeah, try something different. There's a excuse me. There's a sketch by Francisco Goya. He's 96 years old. He did a charcoal sketch of himself walking with two canes, and in the margin he wrote "Aún aprendo," which is Spanish for "I am still learning." And for me, that's a theme. I want to continue to learn.
And it sounds like you are. And I also imagine your life experience plays a role here too, doesn't it, Bob? Have you noticed changes in your patience or perspective compared to earlier in life when you were like, going so fast all the time?
Yes. I when you're doing a large project like the dining table, you have a 4x7 surface that you have to sand. You got to learn patience to sand a 4x7 surface. I mean, you can do some of it with a drum sander, but at the end of the day, you got to get out there with a hand sander
So
and do
that's
it.
by hand. You have to do
Yeah.
that by hand.
Yeah.
So that
I have much more patience with process than I ever have previously, because if you don't follow the process, you're going to end up with a lot more mistakes. There's an old woodworking adage: woodworking minus patience equals firewood.
I like that. Yeah, because if you don't have the patience, you can really mess up some expensive wood, I can
Yep.
imagine. So, um, one of the beautiful things about woodworking is that it often connects us to others. And you've talked about the pieces you've created for your family or loved ones. Um, any of those that you are particularly proud of, or are they, are anything special about any that you remember even either creating it or once it was created?
Um, well, maybe the first dining room set for uh, that I made for the granddaughters, only
Uh-huh.
because it was the first one.
Yeah.
Um, but I've adopted the philosophy: if I make something and give it to somebody, and they want to chop it up and throw it in the fireplace, that's fine. I made it. I'm done with it. It's over. Let's move on to the next one.
So it's once you give the gift, it's theirs to do with
Yeah,
what they
yeah.
want.
Now nobody's done that to my knowledge, but
Yeah.
that's fine. Um, one of the things we talked about was the challenges that you face in this stage of life.
Yep.
Um, and particularly with the woodworking, one of the things I found is there, there, there are three stages or three components of it for me. One is adaptation, another one is accommodation, and finally there's acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
Adaptation is, for example, there was a time when I could throw around a 4 foot by 8 foot sheet or 3/4 inch cherry plywood. I could lift it, I could put it on a table saw, I could break it down. I can't do that anymore. I need help to pick that up, put it on some stands, and then use a track saw to break that down. So that's an example of
Mm-hmm.
adaptation. Um, and the accommodation side, to me, seems to be things like 30 seconds of 30 seconds of an inch are getting increasingly hard to read.
Yeah.
So I'm getting, rulers that are a little easier to read and up in the power of my bifocals. It's just the stuff you got to do.
We're all doing that. I know.
Yeah.
It's just like you got it up here. You can already. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then finally, you got to come to peace with it.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, it'll make you crazy.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
really true. So, what would you say to someone who isn't sure about how they're going to spend their time in in retirement? And couple with that, why is it so important? Why do you believe it's so important to have a creative outlet at this stage in life after we finish the big jobs and go to something else? What I'm going to call self-actualization.
Um, well, let me answer the first one second, I
Yeah.
guess. Um, I think it's important to have a creative outlet because it's better to wear out than rust out. And if you're not
Good analogy.
exercising your mind, if you're not getting up and getting after something, all of a sudden it's noon and you're still running around in your pajamas. You know, and I really had seen people calcify in,
Really?
And I
And I
didn't want
guess
that
it's
for
easy to do.
myself, and I
It's
don't
easy
think
to
it's
do.
good for
Yeah.
anybody.
Yeah, it's easy to do too. You can
Yeah,
easily find yourself just sort of walking around. Yeah.
yeah. You know, you again, given all the years of getting up on Mondays and catching that 5:45 flight, I was in the habit of being up at
Yeah.
4:30 every morning. So I I still get up 5:30, 6 o'clock, and got to have something to do. You can only do so many New York Times crossword puzzles.
That's
Um,
right. That's exactly right.
yeah,
So, what would you say to someone, going back to my
yeah,
original first question, what would you say to someone who isn't sure what to do, how they're going to spend their time? We talked about Tom Schreier, about finding purpose, and it sounds like you've certainly found purpose in what you're doing. What would you say to someone who is, you know, still on that journey? They've just retired or thinking about retiring, and they're saying, I don't know what to do.
well, try anything, try something. Um, all it can be is a false step,
Yep.
and it's you know there's no failure in it. It's just you found out what wasn't good for you.
Yeah.
It's it would be like if I had tried pottery or something.
Yep.
Um, I was fortunate because I found a niche relatively quickly
Mm-hmm.
and found something that I enjoy doing. And yeah, again, try something. Go somewhere and take a class. I mentioned woodcraft. Most towns have places where you can go and take any kind of class you want to take. They're
Mm-hmm.
community college, woodworking places. Go try it. I mentioned earlier about teaching classes at the wood store. They have probably 4 or 5 classes a week, and there are people there who have never touched a table saw or a hand tool ever, and they go in and they try it, and some take to it, and some say, "Nice idea, but this isn't for me."
And do you see women and men doing woodworking, Bob?
It's interesting you mentioned that. I was thinking about that earlier. When I first started working there, the classes were almost exclusively men.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say now it's probably 40% women.
Really?
Yes. And that's aided by the fact that they have um, at least 3 women who are teaching classes.
Wow. So you have some female experts there who are also teaching.
Yes, yes.
That
And
it's interesting.
there are classes from making kitchen cabinets
Mm-hmm.
to doing scroll saw ornaments for Christmas and everything in between. And we have kids classes and that kind of stuff. So it's again, going back to your question about I don't know what I want to do next. Try something.
And it doesn't have, we talked to Leslie Breaksick, who wrote the book on revealing your next seasons. It does, if even if you like it, it doesn't mean you have to do just that. You could do something else too.
Yeah. Yeah. I think part of the mythology is that we have one thing that we do.
Yeah.
And I think that's a mistake. We're all multifaceted.
Yes.
We're all multidimensional, and you can do lots of different things. And so many hobbies like woodworking, you can get into relatively inexpensively.
Yeah.
You don't have to go out and buy $30,000 worth of equipment.
Yeah.
Some of us do, but you don't have to do that. I mean, some woodworkers do. But they don't.
You don't have to.
You don't have to.
Yeah.
You can take up carving, and carving's something that's relatively easy to learn how to do the mechanics of. Takes a lifetime to be really, really good at it, but it's rewarding, it's fulfilling, and you can make things to give people.
Yeah.
Which is nice because everybody likes to get stuff that you make.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Bob, a couple of quick questions. We're almost out of time. What's usually playing? Do you listen to music in your workshop? Do you have music podcasts, or do you like to work quietly?
I can't do podcasts because podcasts require me to pay attention.
Yeah.
And I can't do that and do what I'm supposed to be doing. I listen to music,
Okay.
and um, Sirius XM has a channel called Smoky Soul Town,
Okay.
and, and they play um, Motown and soul music from the 60s and 70s,
Yep.
which is pretty much my wheelhouse,
Yeah.
given where I grew up, given when I grew up. So when I walk into the shop, I have an apron that I wear that has my marking and measuring tools in it and a few other things. And I grab my hearing protection and I say to Siri, Siri, turn on Smoky Soul Town on Sirius XM radio. And when I leave the shop, I say, Alexa, or not Siri, but Alexa, Alexa, stop. And
It's over.
that's it.
That's right. Bob, I have to tell you, this has just been such a fun conversation. Thank you for sharing, not just your craft and what you're doing, but also your perspective on this season of life, because we're all looking to make a difference and to have meaning in our lives and to have community. And it seems like woodworking has met that for you. So has it?
It has. It did everything I wanted it to do because, I went into this intentionally,
Yeah,
or with intentionality, I guess would be a better way to say it. And I think it
yeah,
has fulfilled that for me.
yeah, yeah. Well, for our audience, I'm going to close with our silver lining, and I want to thank Bob again. Bob, you've just been a wonderful guest. I could talk to you about this more, and I will. I will call you and ask you some other things. But I want to give a small reflection and a practical tip for our audience, and that is try this simple formula for building a life you enjoy: one social anchor, one movement anchor, one curiosity anchor. And Bob, I think you've sort of done all of this. You met the social piece, you got the movement piece with the Motown and with the lifting and the sanding and all that stuff. And one curiosity, remaining curious. And if you don't want to do woodworking, try something else. You might want to try something just as simple as having coffee with a friend, someone who joins a walking group or walking habit, or a weekly class. Or you can always volunteer to do something meaningful in the community, do a yoga class, woodworking project, whatever fits you. But trying to give yourself something to do that's meaningful to you, because research has shown when your weeks have rhythm, you feel less adrift, more connected, and more alive. So, Bob, thank you for sharing not just your craft, but your perspective on this season of life. It's really a great reminder that retirement can be a time of creativity, growth, and legacy. So, to our audience and everyone listening, thank you for joining us. If this episode sparks something in you, share it with someone who's looking for what comes next. And be sure to follow us on Beyond 60 Unscripted on social media. Subscribe wherever you listen. And if you have a moment, leave us a review. It helps more people to find our show. So until next time, stay curious, keep building, and remember, the best years are still ahead.